Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. You've had a much busier day than me by the looks of things.
Until about quarter past, 9:30 tonight. Yeah, it's one after the other, but it's
Oh,
really fun.
great, great.
So, please introduce yourself to everybody, what you do, your titles, plural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So my name's Rhys Thomas. I live up here in Newcastle, where I've got a joint position with the university and the hospital. But first and foremost, I'm an epilepsy doctor, and when I'm up there, I'm at the university, helping study both the causes of epilepsy and the consequences of it, good and bad. And then because that's my focus, I get involved with other things like this. I've got partnerships with other people or help support other charities. But yes, epilepsy front and centre really.
And how did you get into epilepsy? Why did you choose to focus on that?
Oh, that's a great question. I can answer that question differently if I'm asked to lie interview or because I've got people in the family with epilepsy.
Okay.
Advanced with that. People started talking about that after I declared an interest, and I think I've just got a big family. Um, I I was always going to be a neurologist, I think, but I sort of dallied with psychiatry or infectious disease. And I found a specialty where being able to communicate and chat with people was probably as important as physical examination or be able to read a scan. So the fact it's a chatty specialty, I think really brought me on board. And the more I delved myself into it and got deep into the specialty, the more fascinating I thought it was. And I haven't ceased finding it fascinating.
Uh, well, thank you, and it's worth noting for everybody listening that I haven't said this to you before, but I don't know how you managed to spread yourself out amongst all these charities and organisations, north and south, and still remain alive because you do so much, don't you?
I'm not alone that way. There are other colleagues that you find out what they're doing and think, oh no, how could they be involved with that as well? They're spread so thinly. I think it goes to show quite seriously that more specialists are needed, not just in specialist centres, but across the country. And that's part of the reason I've been involved with the ILEE, is trying to make sure that production line remains there, because it's a really rewarding specialty. You know, it is a situation where you can meet people at their lowest. You know, they've that lightning bolt has struck that they never thought was going to happen, and you can help to rebuild life and confidence and get people back doing to whatever is needed, back to being part of normal life, or back to work, or back to driving. For some people, it is really rewarding.
That's lovely, and also, obviously, some people have refractory epilepsy, and what they can't, generally speaking, I would say, get back to normal. I don't think I've ever been normal, to be honest, but I've never driven. I've never done any of this stuff. How do you communicate to a patient, a person who has refractory epilepsy and quite honestly is likely to have so pretty much forever? Like, because this happens, right?
Yeah, it's a slow process, and often I think the penny has dropped for the individual first. So by the time you have that conversation, because often it is about medicine. You know, the thing about epilepsy is that the conversation in the consultation is always alongside medicine. And the conversation is about, do you want to try a new tablet, or apologising for the disaster of the last try of the new tablet, or do you want to think about surgery or what might be on the horizon for you? And there becomes a stage, and it's different for everybody, where they feel, I'm good actually. This is probably, I just want to stick where I am for a while. And I think it's at that stage that the conversation is structured as to what my ambitions are. You know, so there are some people I still think we can get you better, but than this, not, but we might have to consider whether it's worth the risk of more side effects. And at that stage, you might be saying, look, I don't think that driving is part of your future, but I'd like it to be that your seizure pattern is safer, or that the types of seizures that you have actually might get better as you get older. Or for some people, it might be, it's your sleep or your mood that's the bigger issue here, and the tablets aren't part of the question here. There's actually other avenues that we can focus on.
And in that case, do you ever refer patients to neuropsychiatrists, things like that?
Yeah, yes, and neuropsychiatry is a really funny one. It's, you know, if I say there aren't sufficient neurologists with interest in epilepsy in the UK, there's certainly a dearth of neuropsychiatrists. But when you find a good one, they are worth their weight in gold. A great counsellor, a great psychologist, a great neuropsychiatrist, and some people have got great charities nearby who do some of that work as well. And it doesn't help that for kind of institutional reasons, sometimes the psychiatry notes are kept separate from the physical health.
Right. It's ridiculous when they're so intertwined, really, or should be.
Yeah, and even if they're accessible, sometimes the trusts are different. So there are institutional barriers. You're prescribing same drugs for the same organ in the brain, or seeing people for the same reasons, moods, seizures. That needs to change. That really needs to change.
Okay. And if you could give, oh, actually, no, I know what I was going to ask you. What do you do? I'm sure there's not one answer that covers all, but when patients, because I've been in this position, you don't take your drugs regularly, not because you're being naughty, but because you forget, because the drugs make your memory pants, and then you forget, and then you feel bad, and then you get stuck. How do you help those people?
Oh yeah, look, I have to admit, there's part of me that always feels really happy and really excited when people start talking honestly and realistically about their tablets, because I think at that level we've got a rapport and I think we understand each other, and people can be honest about the fact you get to the end of the week and there are a couple left over and you say, I haven't a clue where those two left over would have come from, or the fact that, I don't know, maybe the morning one's fine because if you forget in the morning you can catch up, but if you forget the bedtime one, you're asleep. You know, I think when people start having those conversations, I think you're onto a winner. And there's, and amongst that, there's also a small group of people who will just fess up to just doing their own thing. The estimates, you know, the drugs isn't a regimen, it's an estimate as to what you may or may not do. And again, as long as people are honest, you can do so much with that, because people are learning a lot about themselves and their tolerance to side effects and how the drugs work. I mean, it comes within margins. You probably don't want people to take themselves off everything. And there are loads of people who would have thought, gee, the tablets are worse than the illness here. You know, what happens if I just get rid of everything and start from scratch? As long as you're aware that there are certain things that would be risky.
Like SUDEP, possibly.
That's the risk. Yeah, that's the risk. It's you know, a high risk of a bounce back seizure, and if your body's not used to it, that single one could be a big problem.
I did do that once about 20 years ago. I was so angry, so depressed, so just angry with life and the fact that I didn't have controlled seizures, and I did what everyone should not do, and I just came off them overnight. And I had 3 seizures, like one after the other. I was lucky I was fine, and I didn't tell anyone, and nobody else knew. And I was like, okay, I need to get back on these.
But sometimes people do find out that the drugs are needed by accident, because you get so blasé that suddenly you don't have any pills left in that packet in the back of the cupboard. That's an empty one, and it's a bank holiday weekend, and where are you going to get it from? And then you discover that the tablets are working, or the opposite. I mean, one of the types of epilepsy I studied in my thesis. For years, we taught people it's lifelong, until the patients came back to us and said, it's not, you just don't follow us up in our 30s and 40s, and we all take ourselves off the meds, and we are too embarrassed to come back and tell you it's not lifelong. I mean, it took for us to work out that we'd been given the wrong information to people.
That's amazing. I came across a chap on Facebook a while back who, in the UK, and he had not seen a neurologist in 20 years since his diagnosis. And I was like, wow, dude, you need to get referred. And the reason that he contacted me was because he'd suddenly started having seizures again. And I said, well, I'm not a neurologist, epileptologist, but I know human bodies are weird and they change over time, hormones and everything. You need to see a neurologist. And so I'm sure that there are a few people out there like that.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that's not often used in the UK, and it's a bit of a taboo, is a second opinion. You know, there are loads of different personalities out there, and the person who you met when you first got your diagnosis is almost certainly not going to be the person you meet after 20 years. And just a different approach and a different way of putting things. You could just find someone you connect with who can help you move on.
Yeah, and you have every right to ask for that, right?
Oh,
I used to have a neurologist many years ago, and I'm just not going to swear, but that's what that person deserves.
Yep.
But then when I found Queen Square, I just thought my life was saved, and I'm so happy there. So there is that, like you say, that person out there that will be right for you.
And it could be because your care needs to be escalated. So you end up at a more established centre like Queen Square. Sometimes it's just having somebody else who independently has given you the same opinion that helps you accept that actually I should try another round of medication, or I should consider something dramatic like a stimulator, or just having a different voice but the same idea across sometimes helps. And also sometimes it's about the person. If your neurologist isn't quite the person that you want to open up to, or is too much like you and you're looking for an authority figure or a female voice or whatever you're looking for, you can seek it out.
And that is so reassuring, actually. Maybe you should write a blog for us about that. That is great, because people feel guilty. For those who haven't seen it, Rhys Thomas has written us a blog, and it's up on Epilepsy Sparks. If anybody wants to contact you, follow up on this, how should they do that, or how should they find you online?
Yeah, it depends on what they're asking me the question for. But my university email is always open, or you can tweet me. I'm happy to chat about epilepsy all day. Yes, if it's something medical, it probably has to come through a proper channel.
Yeah, nothing weird, people. Okay. Right.